science is things we can observe, study, test, demonstrate, etc. You can even take a creature with a very short generation time, like an amoeba. I think they grow up, get married, have kids in 20, 30 minutes. It's not maybe not amoeba, but they divide in half. But there's those that do by conjugal replications. It's designed. Get over it. Just common sense would tell you that. So we don't observe the animal producing anything other than its kind.
So Kent said that I've never seen a non-cow come from a cow. Now, I've never seen a non-Kent come from a Kent, like his son specifically, but I can still show that his son is his son because I can look for patterns in the DNA. So even though I've never seen, I didn't see Eric being born. I didn't see Kent impregnate his wife. I have no idea these things happen. I've never directly observed them, but I can still prove his son is related to him by looking at patterns in his DNA because there are specific mutations that only exist in Kent's DNA, and we can find those patterns in his offspring because the way offspring are formed is by the mutation of those cells reproducing and creating the same patterns in his offspring as in him. Now, luckily, the same process has happened throughout all life, and so we can see the same mutation patterns in different species and know they're related in the exact same way we can know Kent has a son, even though we've never seen a non-Kent come from a Kent.
Tom, you are muddying the water by saying a parent produces a kid. Let's say an adult human produces a miniature human.
Sure.
That's still a human. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The theory that God said they're always going to bring forth after their kind, when that's what we observe, that's a rational theory. All we've ever seen is amoeba produce amoeba and dogs produce dogs, and they don't ever change.
Well, that's again post hoc rationalization. That's not a prediction. That's people that are goat herders 2,000 years ago looking around them and saying what happens, and then they wrote it down in a book. That's not a prediction. That's a post-diction. So that's not evidence. That's goat herders writing down what they observe.
Yeah. And some moron walking around the islands because you can't get a real job named Charlie Darwin sees a bunch of birds, produce a bunch of birds, and says, wow, this proves everything's created. You want to make fun of the goat herders manual, I can make fun of your stupid religious leader, Charlie Darwin, too. Okay.
Well, I agree with you there. So what Darwin said wasn't evidence. What Darwin said was a theory, and then the evidence was when his theory was confirmed. He predicted things and he got it right, and that was the evidence. So his predictions aren't anything, but at least he made predictions about things we didn't know yet, and then once he got those right, they were proven correct. That's the evidence, which didn't happen for the Bible. They didn't.
Where's the scientific evidence that an amoeba turned to a human? Well, the kids are being taught that. Where's the science?
I've already answered that many times, and I was correct with all of my answers before. But
all we ever see is amoeba produce amoeba,
which I've already explained. I never see a Kent produce a non-Kent, but I can still prove it. Again, you keep being confused because you think you need to directly observe this. I mean, we can directly observe macroevolution in lab. We have done this, but you don't accept that. So it's not really, I can prove that too, but we don't need to. Like you keep saying, we haven't observed a non-cow come from a cow. Well, I haven't observed a non-Kent come from a Kent. I don't need to. I can prove a Kent can produce a non-Kent, and I don't need to observe it. So that's your argument. You've never observed. You never observed.
I'm not understanding what you're saying. Are you saying a Kent, K-E-N-T, or a kid, K-I-D?
Kent, Kent Hovind, Kent. A Kent produces a non-Kent. Kent produces Eric. Eric is not Kent. Kent produces a non-Kent.
And that is your evidence that an amoeba turned to a human?
No,
Tom, what planet are you living on anyway, son?
No, that's not my argument here. Is that your argument is silly, and I can prove your argument is silly. So your argument is that we've never seen.
I don't think you will find a sane person in the world who will believe what you just said.
Let me try to explain here. So your argument is that we've never seen a cow produce a non-cow. Now let me take that argument. I'm going to reframe the structure here and use the exact same structure of your argument, and let's see how silly your argument is. I've never observed a Kent produce a non-Kent, just like I've never observed a cow produce a non-cow. But I can still prove both in the exact same way by looking at the DNA. I can look at the DNA of your kids and compare it to yours and be like, oh, look, a Kent has produced a non-Kent. There's evidence of this. So I can believe that a Kent, has produced a non-Kent by looking at the evidence, just like I can prove that a cow or an amoeba has produced a non-amoeba by looking at the DNA evidence. So I can be justified in both without ever having to see a Kent produce a non-Kent, because I can look at the DNA, which is the evidence. So I don't need to see a Kent produce a non-Kent. I just need to see the DNA.
Right. I think we are watching visible evidence that our public school produces morons.
Well, I mean, I didn't go to public school, so I think you've lost.
Okay.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, James. It sounds like you're a Aaron Nelson, Aaron Ra disciple, and you're reading script straight from his website. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's all it sounded awful familiar. I've seen it before.
Well, you know, Kent, I don't know where you would ever get the idea that I had watched Aaron Ra's stuff, because, I mean, here we have Aaron Ra looking for fossils, and he says they definitely count as evidence for evolution. And I would go with him any day over someone hand waving away an entire field of evidence. And, you know, I see that you decided to disregard my warning and, you know, breach that ninth commandment in terms of Hakel, but that's fine. You know, how's that going to work for you on Judgment Day? I guess you might not be too happy with that. So, Ken, I have to ask you, so a lot of these whale pelvises, now you've done extensive studies on the whale reproductive system, and you've commented on that tonight, and their 15-foot penises, and that these are muscle point attachments. But some of these pelvises have ball and socket joints. So why would it need a ball and socket joint just for muscle attachments?
Maybe it has to swivel around.
But
are you married?
They're locked in position. I'm not. I'm divorced, Kent.
Okay.
We're in the same boat.
Okay.
It's yeah.
There are trillions of fossils in the ground. Nobody is seeing them form. A lot of animals died today. There's probably 30 deer got hit on the roads out here in the last 6 months. None of them are going to fossilize. None. We have fossils by the trillions. They had to be buried like Noah's. Would that be evidence of Noah's flood for you, James? Is that enough evidence?
No, it wouldn't, Kent. It would be evidence of a long period of time where we know that the odds of fossilization are probably well under 1%, probably a hundredth or 1,000th of a percent. So the fact that we have billions or maybe even trillions of fossils is a testament to how long this process has been going on. It's a long time. And you could go through and you could go down to the bottom of Grand Canyon, and you are hand waving away creatures that lived and existed on this earth millions of years before you did. And you're doing that so you can cling to this Bronze Age fable about, I hate to break it to you, Kent, you're not going to live forever. I'm not. We're all going to die one day, and that is terrible. But it doesn't mean it's good to engage in delusion and fantasy, pretending that doesn't apply to us.
Well, again, we got 13 topics going at the same time here, one at a time. The vestigial structures, well, the fossils, okay? There is no fossil record. Somebody's putting their information, their date on them. In the movie The Green Mile, the Bible says God formed the eye. Where did time, space, matter come from? Big Bang, chemical evolution, the stellar evolution, organic evolution, microevolution. There are no transitional fossils. There is no such thing as a primitive unicellular organism. I looked up how many there are 20,000 different kinds of single-celled organisms. The flagellated paramecium, there. They have a little motor in their skin. We're talking a single-celled creature.
Yeah, so I just want to start off by pointing out that before the discussion, we kind of agreed on 2 to 3 topics, because Kent complained that too many topics would, you know, he couldn't follow them, he couldn't get up to them. Now, I just want to point out the dishonesty of somebody going through movies, Common Designer, amoebas, Darwin's Thing, chimps and humans, variations genetic code, demonstrating limits, chance. Then he went on to the eye and how that came about, the universe, chemical evolution, cosmological evolution, stellar evolution, organic evolution, macroevolution, phylogenetic tree, the primitive unicellular organisms, kinds of primitive kinds of bacteria and amoebas, biological motors. Now, this is not 2 to 3 topics, and for somebody that sits there and says, well, no, I can't handle too many, this is a scattershot. And so I just want to point out the dishonesty of that. And, you know, the Green Mile's a movie, Kent. It's not real, mate. It's not real. This is a gish gallop. Again, you're basically throwing out thing after thing after thing after thing, so I can't respond. So I'll grab the time it takes to respond to each and every single one of these. There are things that we can test. There's experiments that we can do. It absolutely is science. And that was actually determined in a court of law. And I'm sure you're familiar with court of law, Kent.
Emotional damage.
ID, intelligent design, is not a science, while evolution absolutely is. Well, I want to ask you, and you've already admitted that we do see animals changing over time. A dog breeder will change dogs over time. You know, that is something that we all see, and you're not even disputing it, and I understand that. But first, where is the physical mechanism, and can you demonstrate the physical mechanism for putting a limit on change? You can point to papers, you can point to research, you can provide your own research, but where is, because a cow jumping over a moon, we know that in physics there is a physical limiter to how much muscle mass you can get, how high that you can translate that energy into. There's a lot of physical limits that we can absolutely describe using physics and other scientific means. But where is your limit? Where do you have any physical limit that you can demonstrate in the scientific field to the limits that you're claiming exists on evolution? And you know, that you think microevolution turns into macroevolution.
Well, you've given about 12 topics here. You're doing the Gish Gallop and accusing me of it.
You brought it up.
The variations that we see, you asked, are there limits? What are the physical limits? Well, first of all, you got a great barrier going from a single-celled anything to multicellular. Where are the two-celled creatures in the world today? Not a colony, but a two-celled creature, or three-celled, or four-celled. I agree they can colonize and work together to do things, but that's not a single individual. We don't see it happening. We see a lot of single-celled creatures, 20,000 different kinds, which you guys all believe came from a dot of near nothing or nothing exploding, a singularity, or I'm sorry, rapidly expanding. I think you don't have a good theory that goes back to zero. I do. God created everything in 6 days. I take that by faith, and I'm not demanding that be taught to all the kids in school. You guys take by faith it all came from a dot and want that taught in school. So the limits that we see, your first barrier is getting from non-living material to living material. First of all, getting matter from anywhere. Where did matter come from? That's a limit, okay? How do you explain that? How did this matter come alive? There's a limit. Do it again in the laboratory. I want to watch it happen this time. Where do you get the idea that these similarities, the only way it can be interpreted is common ancestor? Why couldn't the genetic similarities be common designer? Same guy wrote the code. What is wrong with that theory, Mark?
All right, so I just want to point out that you didn't address my question at all on the limits of where this exists. You talked about, and I didn't Gish Gallop, every single topic bar one question was brought up by you, Kent, and only because you started talking about limits. So every single point of the last statement was addressing what you said. You Gish Galloped and I had to address them all. That's not me. If you don't want me to talk about excess topics, stop bringing them up.
Do you believe over quadrillions of years, an amoeba will turn into a whale?
Quadrillions of years? Where's quadrillions of years coming from? You're an educator. Come on, man. We've got 13.7.
I know, and I'm trying to educate you. Come on, man.
Don't be doing that. Come on, man.
You don't do it by being silly. Quadrillions of years. We got 13.7 billion years. And that we're dealing with. We got 4.5 billion years on Earth. After about 300 or 400 million years, yes, we started to get single-celled animals, not quadrillion. We're not even talking numbers like that.
I'm just pointing out that I will give you all the time you want. Now go back to the question. You fill in the time. Did an amoeba turn to a whale? And you fill out. Did it turn to a whale at all? And you tell me how much time it took.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No amoeba ever turned into a whale. And then you hold up your hand like you've won some kind of battle. Who would ever say that? Do you ever hear an evolutionist say, look, Ken, we came from this bird. No, we say that we came from apes, chimpanzees. We don't do ridiculous things like that. Now, you want to go back and start tracing mammals back through where we divided off with rodents and stuff like that. Sure, but this isn't something that there's one or two lines. There's millions of lines, Ken, and there's dead ends where animals just did not make it. The environment changed too much, or we had a catastrophe that just wiped them out and allowed another animal to live on. So no amoeba turned into any massive mammal. No, not even close. It's just a complete misunderstanding. And if you read that in a textbook, I'm telling you, get that textbook off the shelf.
Where is the evidence of an amoeba ever producing anything other than an amoeba? Amoebas have a very short generation time. They get born, grow up, get married, and have kids in about, 20 or 30 minutes, some of them. So you could raise thousands of generations, tens of thousands, in one human lifetime. Has any scientist ever seen an amoeba produce a non-amoeba? Mark?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing for sure, Ken. I don't think you've ever seen an amoeba grow up and get married and breed with another amoeba. So we're just going to pretend you didn't even say that. That is the most embarrassing thing I think I've ever heard somebody say. We're going to leave that alone. So Kent thinks that amoebas breed with each other and have babies. So, but let's take black skin, for example. Kent, where do we find people with black skin?
I have actually never seen a black man. I've seen some.
You know what I'm talking about, Ken. What we consider a black-skinned person.
I've never seen a white man, Mark. This is white. I'm not white. You're not white. I've never seen a white man, never seen a black man. I've seen all different shades of brown. Some pretty dark, some pretty light. So I think those living near the equator or those exposed to a lot of sunshine, those with darker skin seem to be protected more from skin cancer and problems with that. So they probably would survive better. It might be a case of natural selection, selecting darker skin to survive in some climates and lighter skin to survive in other climates. But again, I don't know that that could be proven. That could be theorized. So yes, I believe all humans, dark or light skinned, are related. I've never seen a black man.
So no, you're absolutely wrong. The skin color stops it from being able to absorb too much sunlight, and that is why it's there. And that is a good example of something that if it hadn't evolved, it would have died, and that is us. And us to the north with dark skin do not get enough of the vitamins that we need out of the sun. So we are designed to absorb it or die, and they are designed to reject it or die. So there is a perfect example of evolution. And I know you tried to bring in that there was some kind of racist tone to that. My wife happens to be, or my girlfriend happens to be a black lady, and they prefer to be called black, not brown. So she is a black woman, and she's from Grenada.
So Mark, you believe darker skinned people thrive and do better and actually need to be sunlight down near the equator. And the further north they get, the more dangerous that is. Yet you brought a Grenada woman up to Canada. Are you trying to harm her in some way? She needs to have a long talk with somebody about that. Yes, they can interbreed. You're still human. Try to breed with a chimpanzee. Get a dark or a light-skinned one. Find an albino chimpanzee if you'd like. It won't work, okay?
I didn't bring a Grenadian woman up. She's lived here her entire life.
Yes, we have decided to put arbitrary borders and say when the kid turns 13, he's now a teenager. That's what the word teenager means. We have decided that humans go through different stages of their life, okay? They go through the stage of infancy and then childhood and then puberty and then adulthood. It's still a human. That is not the same as these charts showing an amoeba turning into a whale. The amoeba, the amoeba.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Over small changes, slowly. This is what you're trying to say. You're trying to hide the truth, Horacio. Stop it. You think the amoeba turned to a whale, don't you?
No, the way you say it, no.
Okay, tell me how it happened then. How did the amoeba, is this chart telling the truth? It's got a whale on there. Did the whale have an ancestor that was an amoeba?
It is a bad representation, and that's probably why you are misunderstanding it and misrepresenting it, because
I understand it.
It is not very good. But that single cell organism at some point became multicellular, which we have seen happen, and then it started accumulating different traits that would spread through different branches of that tree. It's not just one that started to create different things, but a little branch created another set of branches, etc., etc. Does that make sense? Of course.
No, not to anybody, including you. Okay, you believe this. This is not science. We don't observe any of this. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Look up the word science in the dictionary. Seer, to know. What do we know? We know amoeba produce amoeba. We know cows produce cows. That we know. We do not know that an amoeba can turn into a cow over trillions of generations or can slowly add information. These charts are deceptive. They are lying to our kids. I resent it. That's all. If you don't have any evidence for your theory, get a new theory. But drawing a bunch of lines on paper between the different creatures is not science. And
but
they do this all the time in the textbooks.
That you don't accept it doesn't make it go away.
It doesn't need to go away. It doesn't exist. There is no evidence for anything on this chart. This chart shows a protozoa slowly becoming a jellyfish, a mollusk, an insect, a human, a reptile, a frog. If you trace the lines back, you believe, if you believe this type of these charts, you believe you're related to a frog. Do you believe you're related to a frog over billions of generations? Yes or no?
Not in the way you are phrasing it, no. And that specific chart is like super dumbed down, and it's just a cartoon of it. I don't think it represents at all what evolution mentions. But let's go back to what you were saying, that it is not science, because science is what we know. But at some point, science comes to something that we don't know when we find out through science, and that's evolution. We found out we didn't know that. We found these evolutionary mechanisms, we understood them, we studied them, and then found the evidence through the fossil record, through, like I mentioned, these experiments that make single-celled organisms go to multicellularity. We see speciation, and those things help us understand through time how things happened, not in the way that your cartoon shows a protozoa going to a biology teacher, because that's not how it happened.
And if you think the top layer is younger, I've never had an evolutionist answer this. They claim the top layer is younger. Where did it come from to be younger?
I was hoping you would bring that up.
Well, is it coming from outer space? All the layers are the same age.
And this has been answered a couple of times. I hope I can phrase it better for you. Yeah, the atoms that make that strata are the same age, because they were created at the same time, let's say Big Bang. But we are not measuring the age of those specific atoms. We are measuring the age of that configuration, that rock, that strata that was created. So you always say, if I shuffle a deck of cards, is the card on the top younger? No, but it's been on the top for the less time. The one that is on the bottom was at the top of that pile before the last one. Does that answer your question better? Like they were created at the same time, but they were ordered at a different point, and they were laid down at a different moment, and that's what we are measuring.
Well, all the atoms to make up the deck of cards are the same age. All the cards are the same age. So you are saying by me moving it from bottom to top, I have now made it younger?
No.
That's not what you're saying?
It has been on top for less time. It's not younger in that way.
So it's still the same age. It's just, well, then how can you date the fossils you find in these layers if moving it doesn't change the age of it?
That's the importance of understanding that, because you are measuring the time that that specific layer was laid down. You're not aging the atoms. You are aging the configuration and that strata, how it was and when it was laid down.
Okay. So in your thinking, in your understanding, your religion, you believe a fossil that is found in a certain layer can be assigned an age because of the age of that layer. Is that what you believe? Okay. So if you found a human bone or footprint or anything in a layer that was way down at the bottom, that would mess up your whole theory, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there are fossils called, just Google OOPArt, out of place artifacts, where down in deep layers they find human artifacts or human bones.
I've done that and I've researched that, and those are either hoaxes or misunderstandings. So
okay, I feel the same way about evolution. It's either hoaxes or misunderstanding.
I've been watching Kent's videos for almost 15 years now. I think I first saw his material when I was in middle school. So you could say it's been a long time coming. It's not exactly like meeting your childhood hero, but maybe a childhood villain might be more apt. So using a genetics test, we can tell if two samples are siblings, i.e. they share a recent common ancestor in their parents. Sequence homology is definitive proof of relation between people in a court of law, and it counts as concrete scientific proof of relationship. Every legal court and scientific paper in the world accepts this, and so does Kent. We can take any three humans on Earth and use genetics to prove that person A is more closely related to person B than to person C. In other words, we have just proven that person A shares a common ancestor with person B more recently in the past than they do with person C. Creationists like Kent will agree with all of this logic. After all, they believe every human shares a common ancestor in Adam and Eve. But somehow, Kent wants to draw a line to say that for some reason, this exact logic, which for some reason Kent will say that this does not apply between species. He will say that you can't look at the sequence homology in the DNA of humans and chimpanzees to say that this is clearly proof that they share a common ancestor. Kent's primary argument here is that humans and chimpanzees are different kinds of animals. He will say that the Bible defines kinds as two creatures that can bring forth, i.e. reproduce.
When your mother and father's genetic material got together and formed the embryo that was going to turn into you, okay, was that following a code of any kind? And is that a pretty complex code, the DNA code you have?
Yes.
To say a human being happened by chance over trillions, quadrillions, quintillions of years is insane.
Right. I'm not saying it happened by chance, though. You just asked, does this thing happen without a designer? That's a false dichotomy between something happening without a designer and something happening just by chance. I don't believe it happened just by chance. So
God said, bring forth after their kind. Do you know an example where this didn't happen? God said they'd bring forth after their kind. He said it a bunch of times. Maybe even you might get it.
I've been
here. You turn all the animals in the world loose out into the pasture. They will seek out their own kind. Our cows show no interest whatsoever in the sheep or the pine trees or the oak trees or the grass.
So what about the animals that do? Like, for instance, dolphins are known to try to have sex with humans whenever they see them. This is a known phenomenon. There are several types of toads that will try to have sex with just about anything. So does that mean that a dolphin and a human are the same kind? If dolphins are attracted to humans and try to have sex with them?
Yeah, maybe they're deprived and horny. I don't know why the dolphin would do such a thing.
A lot of money to swim in here. So you gave it to me for free. Thanks, pal. Hey, I owe you one. Maybe I'll buy you a beer. Hey, what are you...